Hi, I'm Michelle Fakos, an internationally renowned and award-winning expert on Scandinavian art. I've been lecturing and writing on this topic for decades, and I'm both a Swedish and an American citizen living part-time in Stockholm. I'm excited to share with you my research gleaned from books, journals, letters, and conversations with other experts. I know how hard it is to find out about Scandinavian art because I had to learn to read Danish, Norwegian, Swedish, and German to do it. Keep in mind that Scandinavian and Nordic are used interchangeably to refer to the four countries on the northern and western edges of the Baltic Sea. Are you with me? Then let's get started. Artists living in cities during the 19th century often spent their summers working outside the city. The astonishingly rapid growth of cities due to industrialization and urbanization led wealthy Europeans to purchase country properties in order to escape crime, filth, noise, unhygienic living conditions, and diseases like cholera that spread rapidly in densely populated urban areas during the warm summer months. Artists, too, increasingly spent summers in the countryside for these reasons, and also because rural life was much cheaper. Rents and the cost of entertainment, food, and hiring models was far more affordable in rural villages. In addition, the opportunity to paint without distractions in peaceful environments, together with like-minded artists, appealed to them, especially in the second half of the 19th century. The availability of paint in tubes beginning around 1850 made painting outdoors far easier than it had been previously, when artists had to mix paints from powdered pigments and linseed oil. Another compelling reason was that social life in artists' colonies was also fun and informal, with picnics and costume parties frequent occurrences. A rapidly expanding railroad network enabled artists to reach places that felt remote, which Skagen definitely was. Skagen is geographically closer to Göteborg in Sweden, from which it is reached by boat, than it is to Copenhagen. Today, Skagen is an 8-hour train ride from the Danish capital, and in the 19th century, it took much longer. A remote fishing village for centuries, Skagen lies on a narrow point of land wedged between the North and Baltic Seas. Treacherous sandbars, tides, and storms made life for Skagen inhabitants dangerous and unpredictable, and for centuries, fishermen struggled for survival in a tightly knit community where reliance on one's neighbors was an absolute necessity. In 1833, Martinus Rørby was the first Danish artist to discover Skagen as an idyllic place to paint, and he returned there in 1847, encouraged by fond memories of his first visit. Author Hans Christian Andersen visited Skagen in 1859 and publicized the locale in his story, A Story from the Sand Dunes, a tale that follows a newlywed Spanish couple shipwrecked in Skagen on their way to St. Petersburg, Russia, where the young husband planned to take up a diplomatic post. In 1871, renowned Danish poet Holger Drachmann visited Skagen together with his wife. It was a productive summer for him, and the following year the couple returned, together with Norwegian painter Fritz Thalo, brother-in-law of the French artist Paul Gauguin. Around the same time, 2 students from the Copenhagen Academy of Art arrived: the Danish painter Carl Madsen and the Norwegian painter Christian Skredsvig, whose farm would host the Fleskum colony during the summers of 1886 and 87. Their enthusiastic descriptions of their enjoyable and productive summer convinced two of their academy colleagues, Michael Anker and Viggo Johansson, to join them there in 1874. Brundums, the village's only hotel, had recently burned down, forcing visitors that summer to quarter in the cramped cottages of locals. Since most of Skagen's fisher community were fully occupied with survival, Anker, who focused on peasant subjects, had trouble finding models until he met Lars Geihede, whose family were willing models. Geihede lived a squalid existence, sharing his bed with laying chickens. His cottage walls were riddled with holes in that windswept and damp landscape. After catching lice from him, Mikael Anker was careful to keep his distance. The grueling life of fishermen fascinated Anker, though, and his 1880 painting, Will She Clear the Point, was purchased by the Danish king. In 1879, Talo returned to Skagen, bringing with him his wife and his compatriot Christian Krogh, a socially progressive Norwegian painter and journalist. Krogh loved staying at the newly rebuilt Brundums Hotel, the center of social life for resident artists. During his first 2 months in Skagen, Krogh witnessed 7 shipwrecks, a far more frequent occurrence than he had imagined. Niels Geihede, brother of Lars, became his favorite model. Here we see Niels mending a fishing net while his wife Anne spins string. Krogh gives us an intimate view of daily life among Skagen's fisherfolk. Although daylight streams in through the window just beyond our view to the left, it is evidently not a warm day. Anna wears a bonnet and jacket, while Niels wears thick wool socks and a fur hat. Their cottage is modestly furnished, with a multi-purpose table and chairs. On the back wall, a clock, a luxury item at the time, hangs on a cracked and discolored wall alongside a colored image of a sailing ship approached by a rowboat, several pages illustrating animals, domestic as well as exotic, and a print of Leonardo's Last Supper, indicative of the couple's piety. Anne, who rolls a ball of string from the spindle at her side, gazes intently at the viewer with her big blue eyes, while Niels holds a spool of string in his mouth as he knots the net. Behind him, a blue curtain hangs on the built-in bed, a practical measure that ensures privacy, but more importantly, keeps in heat and blocks light. Such beds were ubiquitous in the Nordic countries. One can imagine that the couple tidied up and dressed up in anticipation of Krogh's visit. Nonetheless, Niels's striped shirt and leather knee breeches have been carefully repaired, suggesting that buying or making new clothes was a rare occurrence. Brundums Hotel was owned by the parents of Anna, who, surrounded by so much artistic activity, decided to become a painter herself. For 3 winters beginning in 1875, Anna studied in Copenhagen with Wilhelm Kuhn, who ran an art school for women, because Denmark's Royal Academy of Art did not accept female students. She fell in love with Mikael Anker, who had become a year-round Skagen inhabitant. In 1880, 3 marriages took place in Skagen. Anna Brundum to Mikael Anker, Danish journalist Carl Madsen to Anna's cousin Henrietta Møller, and Viggo Johansson to Anna's cousin Martha. These marriages of local girls to artists from Copenhagen helped to integrate these city slickers into the local community. By the time he first met Bründum and Anker in Vienna in the spring of 1882, Peter Severin Kreuer was already famous. He proved to be an annoying, high-maintenance fellow when he first visited Skagen at their invitation that summer. The son of a rape victim, he was raised by his aunt and uncle, who refused to adopt him. His biography confirms that he was a difficult fellow. Kreuer already knew Krog, whom he had met in Göteborg at an exhibition of Kreuer's recent work. There, Kreuer informed Krog that he didn't like his paintings. Krog arrived to Skagen directly from Grey-sur-Loing, where he belonged to the Nordic artists' colony. Swedish art student Oscar Björk also came to Skagen for the first time in the summer of 1882 and was pleased to be embraced by the art community, an important aspect of life during depressing summers of chilly temperatures and frequent rain and wind. He enjoyed himself there so much that the following summer he returned to Skagen instead of spending it in Grey, as did most of the Swedish expat community. That summer, a number of new Nordic painters joined the summer colony, including Krog's friend, the Norwegian painter Eilif Pettersen, who would join him in the summer of 1886 at the Norwegian artists' colony of Fleskum, northwest of Oslo. The celebrity of the summer of 1883, though, was Georg Brandes, the Danish art and literary critic and university professor who championed realism. By realism, he meant describing the everyday lives of working people and the banal and difficult lives they lived. He is the thinker behind what Scandinavians refer to as the modernist breakthrough in culture. The modernist breakthrough meant abandoning the pre-existing premise governing art, literature, and music that privileged the lives of the upper classes and nobility and limited the choice of appropriate forms and subjects. It excluded the gritty realities of life for the vast majority of people. Realism sought to broaden the parameters of culture in order to offer creators a broader, deeper, and more egalitarian and democratic range of approaches and subjects, ones that more accurately reflected the conditions of modern life. These ideas first emerged in France as a reaction against the idealized and imaginative themes of Romanticism. Honoré de Balzac and Gustave Flaubert were the pioneers of this movement. To promote his ideas, Brandes, along with his brother Edvard and their friend Viggo Hørup, started the daily newspaper Politiken, still in circulation, whose motto was the newspaper of greater enlightenment. Understandably, he admired the dedication of Skagen artists to representing the harsh realities of daily life among the fisherfolk, and hoped, by raising awareness of their situation, artists and writers would encourage reform. Because, other than the flea-ridden hovels of local fisherfolk, the only place to stay in Skagen was Bründum's Hotel, it became a lively and international meeting place. Artists and writers from Denmark, Norway, and Sweden arrived for short visits or extended stays beginning in the late 1870s, and they were later joined by colleagues from England. Kreuer, who was a sociable fellow, adored the camaraderie of artist communities despite his difficult personality, and introduced an idea he had seen at hotels in French artists' colonies: portraits and self-portraits of members and guests, embellishing the dining room walls. He initiated this project by his painting Artist's Breakfast, which, as you see, in the center background, was gradually surrounded by portraits and self-portraits of the many artists who resided in, or even just visited, Skagen. In addition to Anna Brundum Anker, two other women artists were affiliated with the Skagen colony. The Norwegian painter Oda Larsen Krogh, wife of Christian Krogh, and the Danish painter Maria Tripke Krøyer, wife of Peter Severin Krøyer. Both of these women were pioneers of women's liberation. In the decades around 1900, there were many more successful professional Nordic women artists than elsewhere, a phenomenon linked to the singular social history of the Nordic countries. If you enjoyed this content, please hit the thumbs up button and check out my other Scandinavian art videos. Subscribe to my channel if you'd like to keep current with new videos and support this project. You may leave comments and questions in the section below, and please check out my website, www.michellefakos.com, for related articles, books, lectures, and blog posts. What would you like to learn about Scandinavian art?